time of Emperor Tiberius, when Pontius Pilate was governor of Judea, there was a young rabbi named Jesus of Nazareth. His acts of compassion and mercy were known far and wide. Jesus was baptized by his cousin John in the river Jordan. He welcomed a handful of humble men to accompany him and become his disciples. And then he began his astounding ministry, traveling throughout the land, doing many miracles of healing. Crowds followed him to mountaintops, where he spoke of God's infinite love. He befriended the lowly, comforted the meek, and gave hope to those who despair. And when the crowds faced hunger, he fed them. Many Jews welcomed Jesus, but the strict Pharisees and the temple high priest enjoyed the security their positions afforded them. Jesus threatened to upset the status quo, and so they watched Jesus with growing suspicion. April in Jerusalem, Maine, where winter still clings to the landscape. Residents prepare for the Passover meal, a time of great spiritual significance in their faith, cleaning their homes inside and out as the scriptures require. But this year, there is something more. A young rabbi, Jesus of Nazareth, has announced his plan to observe Passover in Jerusalem. He is on his way now. The people eagerly await his arrival, darting to windows to see, is he here? In anticipation, lauding him with green boughs and joyful cheers. Pharisee and high priest know that Jesus threatens to upset their prestige, their power. So they watch his arrival too. The next morning, Jesus went to the temple, a place more dear to his heart than any other. But on arrival, he was dismayed at what he saw. Indeed, the corruption and greed of the money changers was unmistakable. The high priest was in cahoots. The high priest and Pharisee were aghast. But those who had been cheated celebrated this turn of events. After Jesus had cleared away the money changers, he returned to the temple to teach and to pray. There he observed a Pharisee reading from the scriptures, while the high priest inspected the temple veil. Behind this veil was the Holy of Holies, the earthly dwelling place of God's presence, where no one but the high priest was permitted to enter. And at the bottom of the steps, a leper named Simon. The disciples and all who saw were amazed at the healing. The Pharisee was alarmed. What power this rabbi possessed! Immensely grateful, Simon the leper begged Jesus to join him for dinner. Coffee hour at the temple. But while Jesus and his disciples discussed the merits of a good dark roast, the high priest and the Pharisee spoke of something darker. "Let us catch him, saying blasphemous words," they schemed. They cornered him by the bulletin board. The Pharisees asked, "Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" Now, this was a trap, for the answer would offend either the Romans if he said no, or the Jews if he said yes. But Jesus answered, "Show me the coin used to pay taxes." Tell me, whose portrait is on this coin? The Pharisee said, "It is Caesar, of course." Then Jesus answered, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." This answer was astute and revealed Jesus' deep wisdom. Once again, the Pharisee knew Jesus had outwitted him. Later that day, Jesus came to the place where the temple offerings were given. As he watched, wealthy men and women dropped coins into the collection box with great fanfare. "Look how they seek attention," Jesus observed. They put money in slowly to ensure everyone is so impressed. Then an old widowed woman stepped forward and quietly gave 2 small pennies. Jesus remarked, "This poor widow has put more money into the treasury than all the others. The rich man puts in a small portion of his wealth, but the widow puts in all she owns." The following day, Jesus and his disciples went for dinner to the home of Simon the leper. That is, Simon the former leper, or Simon with 2 very nice hands now. While they savored their noodles, a woman entered the room carrying a jar of extremely expensive perfume. She knelt and reverentially she poured the perfume onto Jesus' feet. She was overcome with great emotion. "Why this waste?" shouted Judas, the disciple. "This expensive perfume could have been sold and the money given to the poor." But Jesus answered, "This woman has done a beautiful thing. The poor will always be with you, but you will not always have me. She has done this to prepare me for my burial." Judas did not understand these words. Furious, he left them. Judas was indignant. He could not understand. Jesus did not act like the Messiah Judas wanted him to be. And so Judas snuck off to the high priest and Pharisee. he said to them, "What are you willing to give me if I hand over Jesus to you?" The priest was delighted with Judas's offer and counted out 30 coins of silver. Judas promised to soon arrange for Jesus' arrest. Now, Jesus knew what Judas had done, and he knew too what terrible things he would face at his arrest. Jesus thought about all those whom he had met on his journey of ministry. And as he prayed on the mountain, Jesus could see beyond the horizon, beyond the price of death, to the gift he would give, new life in God.
This is my Father's world, and to my listening ears, all nature sings, around me rings the music of the spheres. This is my Father's world. I rest me in the thought of rocks and trees and skies and seas, his hand and wonders wrought. This is my Father's world. Oh, let me never forget that though the wrong seems oft so strong, and God the ruler yet, this is my Father's world. The battle soon be won. The cross is but a bridge to love, and earth and heaven be one. And earth and heaven be one.
The hour of Passover would soon be at hand. Jesus sent his disciples to the grocery store to obtain that which was needed for the feast. But where would they serve the Passover meal? The disciples recalled how Jesus had instructed them. "A man carrying water will meet you, follow him." Indeed, the disciples saw the stranger with the water. He led them to a large upper room, furnished and ready. This is where they were to make the preparations. The disciples did as Jesus told, and it was just as he had said. When evening came, Jesus and his disciples gathered at the Passover table. Then Jesus arose and did the most unexpected thing. my Lord," cried Peter. "I'm not worthy for you to wash my feet." But Jesus responded, "Now that I have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet." In this way, Jesus demonstrated how they were to serve one another and others after he left them. After these things, Jesus said, "I tell you the truth, one of you will soon betray me." They were all saddened and cried, "Surely not I." Jesus answered, "It is the one to whom I give this piece of bread, dipped in the bowl." Then Jesus handed the bread to Judas. Jesus then took the bread, gave thanks, and broke it, saying, "Take and eat. This is my body broken for you." Then he took the cup, gave thanks, and offered it to them, saying, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. Do this in remembrance of me." My friends, Jesus continued, "I will be with you only a little longer. Where I am going, you cannot come. Now I give you a new commandment. Love one another. All men will know you are my disciples if you love one another." The disciples were dismayed. Jesus was to leave them? Peter said quickly, "Lord, I will follow you. I would lay down my life for you." But Jesus answered gently, "I tell you the truth, my friend. Before the rooster crows tomorrow morning, you will disown me 3 times. As the sun set in the west, Jesus and the disciples walked to a garden called Gethsemane. Jesus said, "My sorrow is great. Stay here. Keep watch with me." The disciples were overcome by sleep. And so Jesus was alone with his grief, broken-hearted by what he must leave and what he must face. As darkness fell, Judas arrived. In the melee that followed, a disciple slashed off the ear of a soldier. But Jesus would have none of it, and he restored his ear. Who was this man who could heal with the touch of his hand? Frightened, Peter hurried to the temple courtyard. What was to become of Jesus? The servant girl walked past saying, "You were with Jesus. I saw you." But Peter answered, "I don't know what you're talking about." Then another approached him saying, "This man's a follower of Jesus." Again, Peter shook his head in angry denial. Then a third passerby turned to him and said, "Surely you're with that man Jesus." Peter yelled out, "I tell you, I do not know that man." Then Peter remembered Jesus' words and wept bitterly. Do you say that you are the Christ, the Son of God? Jesus answered, "I am." Then the priest shouted, "This is blasphemy! Take this man to Pilate, the governor. Have him condemned to death."
In other news, Jesus of Nazareth was sentenced to death by crucifixion today by Governor Pontius Pilate. According to witnesses, Jesus was forced to carry his own cross to Golgotha and was given a crown of thorns to wear. Witnesses say he was hung between two convicted thieves. Above his head, Roman soldiers nailed a sign that said, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews."
At sunrise, on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb. She saw the opened, empty tomb and was frightened. An angel in glowing robes stood nearby and said, "Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth. But he is not here. He is risen." Mary turned at the sound of footsteps behind her. She thought it was the gardener. "Where is Jesus' body?" she sobbed. "Mary." "Jesus!" she cried, overjoyed. "Wait," Jesus replied. "You cannot touch me now," he said gently. "But here is what you must do. Go and tell the others what you have seen. Tell them of my resurrection." That same day, two friends of Jesus traveled along the road to Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. Along the way, they struggled to understand how it could be that Jesus had been crucified. Their spirits were crushed, and that rumor of his having been seen alive. Well, they knew not to believe such nonsense. As they traveled, a stranger fell in stride with them and joined their conversation. With great sadness, the travelers told the stranger all about Jesus, how they had believed him to be the Messiah, and how he had been arrested and crucified. The stranger listened, then responded with great wisdom what had been written in the scriptures about the Christ. The travelers were amazed with his teachings. Upon reaching their destination, they urged the stranger to join them at dinner. He accepted. Sitting together at the table, the stranger gave thanks to God for the food. And then Jesus disappeared. Immediately, they rose up and returned to Jerusalem, praising God and crying out, "It is true, the Lord is risen! We have seen him!" Back in Jerusalem, however, the disciples were still terrified, unsure of what was to come. Peace be with you. They were overjoyed to see the risen Christ sitting among them. But Thomas was not in the room when this happened. He could not be convinced that Jesus had just been there moments before. And when Thomas put his hands on Jesus' marks, he understood the truth. Peter had seen the risen Christ with his own eyes, and yet he was so deeply ashamed at his cowardice while Jesus was in his hour of need. Alone, he would return to a life of fishing. Friend, do you have any fish? Then Jesus asked him, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter said, "Yes, I do." Jesus answered, "Then feed my sheep." Again, Jesus asked him, "Peter, do you truly love me?" Peter answered, "Oh, yes, I do." Jesus answered, "Take care of my sheep." A third time, Jesus questioned, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter was hurt because he remembered he had disowned Jesus 3 times at his arrest. He answered, "Yes, you know I do." And Jesus answered, "Then feed my sheep." 3 times disowned, 3 times forgiven. And then, on a mountainside, Jesus appeared to them one final time. He spoke to them, saying, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me." And then he was gone, ascending into heaven. I will be with you always, to the very end of time. Go and share the good news with everyone. And that is precisely what they did.